All right. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending our budget feedback meeting tonight. A special welcome to the students that are here. My name is Sherry Bell, I'm official trustee of the Greater Victoria School District. And I'd like to start by recognizing and acknowledging the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and Squamish nations, whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work, and we're gathered on this evening. Just before we start, something very important about rooms. Men's washroom is right over here, all gender in the middle, ladies sit over here. So with that, I just want to tell you a little bit about this evening. We're going to start live now. We're going to start a live stream, so we have people that will be watching from home, that are in the audience here, and our agenda will go like this. We'll start with the budget presentation, and that will be done by our Secretary Treasurer, Trina Stride, and that will be followed by roundtable discussions. You'll have 3 ways to provide feedback. One is talking to the person that's at your table. We have a facilitator at each table. So the facilitator, just raise your hand so people at the table know who the facilitator is. Thank you. And once we finish the budget presentation, you can have discussions at one table. And if you want to move to another table, that's fine. If you want to hit all 12 tables, great. You can also leave comments on the white poster paper that is on the walls. And when you came in the door and at your tables, there's a QR code. And that QR code will take you to an online opportunity for feedback. So poster paper, tables, or online. The PowerPoint presentation that Katrina will provide you with tonight will also be online if you want to take a look at it again. And so there'll be, the agenda will be there, the online survey will be there, and the PowerPoint presentation, which will encompass all of the information about the budget. There won't be an official kind of ending to the evening. You can spend as much time as you like moving from table to table, talking to different people, writing things going online. But at 8:30, we'll probably going to start clearing out, but we will come back to the podium to close off our meeting. So you feel free to stay as long as you like and leave whenever you like as well. One of the things I want to say is we've received a lot of letters already. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room have written those letters. The letters are to do with any of the deductions that we have. Now, this is not a place any school district wants to be in. You'll see when we do the presentation that we have an over $5 million structural deficit, which is unfortunate because we have to balance the budget. And there are only so many places that we can reduce the budgets, and that's something I goes to tonight as well. It's absolutely heartbreaking to stand here before you talking about reducing things that are really important to all of you, to the students that are here, to the staff members that are here, the families and parents, community members. It's not a great place to be at all, and we don't want to reduce any budgets, but that is where we are right now. So we'll have a lot more information. Hopefully, you'll leave with a better understanding of where we are, and also provide your feedback. That's what tonight's about. So I want to thank you for coming, and we'll get started with our presentation with our Secretary Treasurer right away. If you're on the live stream, you might hear a little bit of an echo. That's because we're in a very large gym, and I know that there is an echo there, so apologies. Okay, over to you, Katrina.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Katrina Stry, and I'm the Secretary Treasurer for the Greater Victoria School District. And I'm just going to take you through a budget overview, just so you have a sense of what budget looks like in our school district. Then we'll take a closer look at where we're at right now, our financial position, some of the different budget categories, and then ending with the proposed items that are under consideration for balancing this budget. So starting with the budget overview, school districts are required to approve 2 different budgets for each year. So the one we're looking at right now is called the annual budget, and it's based on projected enrollment. And it gets approved in our school district in April. And then what happens is that we base all of our staffing decisions on that, and then in September, we submit reports to the ministry based on actual enrollment. And our operating grant gets recalculated. And then we bring another budget to the board for approval after we've received our revised budget. So we did submit projections for 26-27 to the ministry in February. And we have now received all of the ministry funding announcements for 26-27. And on April 8th, which is next week, we'll be presenting a budget to our official trustee for approval. And school districts are under public sector accounting standards, which means that we account in different funds. And there are 3 funds that we have. There's the operating fund, which captures all of the day-to-day transactions. Special purpose funds, and those are restricted grants and restricted funds that we receive. An example that you might be familiar with is Feeding Futures. And then also the capital fund. So that's where all of our capital purchases go, or if we have any large major capital projects. I'll highlight that we're going to focus on the operating fund in this meeting. That is where we can't have a deficit budget. And so we have to make reductions if we have a shortfall. So looking at our operating revenues, 91.2% of all of our revenue comes from provincial grants. And 8.8%, the rest, is coming from international tuition, rentals and leases, investment income, and other revenue. When we look at the provincial grants, 77.7% of the provincial grant is based on our enrollment. And the remainder, 22.3%, is based on student characteristics and district factors. So, for example, inclusive education, so students who have designations, Indigenous education, English language learners, for example. I'll just highlight that Indigenous education funding is the only funding that we receive that is targeted or restricted. This graph just shows our enrollment trends over quite a few years. You can see that we were on an upward trend. It's a little bit of a dip there during COVID. And we saw a slight decline in 2025, 2026. That's the year we're in now. And we are projecting a further decline for 26, 27. I'll also just highlight too that we have international tuition. You can see that international tuition, international registration was impacted quite significantly by COVID. Hasn't fully recovered. We're projecting a decline in enrollment for the current year that we're in, and just a slightly lower for next year. I always like to highlight that our international tuition, what we do in our district is we take a percentage of their gross revenue right off the top, and it goes to cover services and expenses for the entire district. And that amount for 25-26 is 6.5 million. So just shifting over to expenses. 92.3% of our expenses are related to salaries and benefits. So that's an increase of 0.1% from last year. Everything else, so everything from toilet paper in the schools to student devices, Chromebooks in the classroom, everything else comes out of that 7.7%. If we look specifically at the salaries and benefits, you can see the breakdown of the different employee groups. And not surprisingly, teachers are at the highest percentage at 59.3%. And then the next largest groups of employees are educational assistants at 12.1% and support staff at 11.4%. And within our statements, we also break down our expenses by what's called function. And there are functions that are defined by the ministry. One of them is instruction, and we're at 85.5%. That's everything that's related to the delivery of learning. District administration is at 2.6%. Operations and maintenance, which is essentially our facility services, is at 11.2%. And transportation and housing, we actually don't have housing, so for us, it's just transportation is at 0.7%, not a huge number, given that we're located in an urban area. This slide just shows those functions, the percentages compared to the provincial average. So we're a bit higher in instruction and our operations and maintenance, but lower in district administration and transportation. We've been asked during the budget process, like, how do we compare to other school districts in the province? So we selected 4 other school districts that are close to us, a couple lower in enrollment and a couple higher in enrollment. And so this is a comparison of that breakdown across those school districts. I will just highlight that in district administration, our school district at 2.6% is the second lowest in the province. The only other school district that is lower than us is Burnaby at 2.4%. So just now moving into our current financial situation. Just highlighting a structural deficit because you've probably heard that word before, and just clarifying what that means. And what that means is that our budgeted expenditures are greater than our budgeted revenues, so we have a shortfall. And historically, what we've done in our school district is we've tried to offset that shortfall using prior year surpluses and also one-time expenditure, one-time reductions, and then trying to reduce that number to something that is more manageable. So when we presented this table on March 9th, we didn't have the funding announcement from the ministry. When we received the funding announcement from the ministry, I can share that the funding levels have not changed at all since 25-26. And so you will not see a significant change in the deficit that was presented from March 9th. So the total revenue is there, total expense, and we're still looking at a deficit of 5.2 million. The board has already approved using 2.3 million of surplus that was left over from last year to offset that, and also approved 1.3 million projected surplus from the year we're in right now. So we have a shortfall that's under 1.5 million. And if you compare to where we were this time last year, it was 1.7 million, so pretty similar. I'll just address one question that comes up fairly often is, if we're projecting a deficit of 1.5, often what happens at the end of the year, we have the surpluses available. And the question is, why can't we use those surpluses to protect different programs? And the reason why is we budget conservatively, but our margins are very small. Even $1 million one way or the other is commonplace. And so when we're looking at our year-end surplus, it's usually a result of a one-time factor. So something that's happened that's not likely to happen again. I'll give you an example from this year, and that is that we had a really warm winter. We haven't had any real big snowfall, so we haven't had to plow snow and incur those costs. We actually don't budget for snow removal. We cross our fingers and hope we don't need to, because we would hate to budget for an amount like that and then not have it happen. We'd have to make service reductions as a result. But what we do get at the end of the year is money that we didn't expect to be available. Other things that happen are vacancies, like positions that aren't filled right away, or you can't fill a position for a whole year. Other times we also intentionally underspend. So in one of our budget years, we knew we were facing a big deficit. So partway through the year, I think it was after spring break, we said, we're just gonna not spend anymore this year. We're gonna try to build our surplus up as much as possible to help offset the future deficit. I will say though that 1.3 million that's already been approved to put forward, we have some reasonable certainty that that will occur based on the work that's been done with schools and departments. But if we were to go beyond that number, I think we would put ourselves in a risky position because we don't know for sure if we'd be able to see that at the end of the year. And we would be in September having to make projections at that point. So what causes a structural deficit? There are quite a few things that can cause it. This is just some of the things that we've experienced. Every year when we balance our budget with one-time reductions, the next year when we're building the budget, we have to add them back. So that is one thing. Every time we see declining enrollment, either ministry funded or international, it lowers our revenue. We've seen declining interest rates on our investments. We've chosen to staff our non-enrolling teachers at levels that are greater than what's in the collective agreement. For example, at elementary, we have a 0.5 FTE counselor at every elementary school, which is in excess of the ratio. The exception is Sundance Bay, just because of the size of that school. There's also programs that are not funded by the ministry, so they don't generate funding, and middle school music is an example of that. There's unfunded inflationary costs, so every year all of our software maintenance contracts, a lot of service contracts, we see inflationary increases tied to them. There's also unfunded costs. So employee benefit increases. So when the premiums go up, or if our employees start to use their benefits more, and internal costs that we don't get funding for from the ministry. Other costs, step income. So a teacher gets their master's degree and goes up on their grade and gets a higher salary. Those things are not funded by the ministry. And the other thing we've seen as well is an increase in replacement costs. So the average number of days that our employees are away has gone up quite significantly. In the current year, we have some unavoidable expenses that have been included in the trustee election. So school districts are required to pay any costs that are associated with that. And then lastly on this list is technology replacement. So that would be, for example, our student devices, the Chromebooks. We have a ratio that we set for elementary, middle, and secondary schools. And so to ensure that we can maintain that ratio, we need to refresh those devices every year. And then I'll just highlight as well, like some of the things that we are doing, on an ongoing basis to help reduce the cost. So it isn't just when we get to budget time, where we start to look at where we can make reductions. It's a constant, evaluation and process, and we're trying to reduce cost, every day. It's not just constant. So for example, we participated in, joint purchasing groups. We do cooperative procurement. There's a shared services organization that does procurement on behalf of school districts. We try to jump on those things whenever we can. We will negotiate our service contracts. Sometimes they'll give us reduced rates if we'll lock in for longer years. We complete audits of our contracts, our expenditures, our commodity taxes to see if you can find any potential cost saving opportunities. We've standardized our equipment and we've strengthened our inventory management controls. I think Chromebooks is a perfect example of that. We also extend the life of our assets as long as possible. I think those Chromebooks are lasting 7 years, which is pretty amazing. But we're doing that also with our equipment. There is associated risk with that, but we are getting our value out of what we're paying. We're also investing in energy efficiency, so switching out LED lighting, using hydro rebate programs, and also have hired staff to come in and do building optimization so that our controls are set, so that will reduce our utilities costs. We've looked and completed transition to digital and online workflows to reduce administrative overhead, also reduces paper usage. Organization and staffing adjustments, including consolidating roles, attrition-based reductions, and shared staffing, so shared staffing across departments, across schools. Also, maximizing our revenue through the rental of our facilities and by leasing. So this building is a great example. Big High was here during the seismic update. We now have our firm renting out a third of the building and bringing us in some revenue. Okay, so budget categories, and this is more just to help you understand the things that we pay for and sort of what category they fit into, whether it's something that we can make reductions to or not. So the first category is collective agreement obligation. So for these are ones that we can't really touch because they're enrolling teachers, they're in the classroom, we allocate them based on enrollment, and they're allocated also based on class size and composition. There's also non-enrollment teachers, and those are counselors and librarians, and there's a ratio that is within their collective agreement. So staff, as I mentioned, in excess of the ratio, but definitely to the ratio. There's also professional development obligations and the benefits. The next two slides identify some of our expenditures that don't have a tie to the collective agreement. So music is on that list. Middle music, we're spending 1.2 million. Elementary strings, 140,000. Instrument repairs, 50,000. Miscellaneous is 40. Athletics, we spend 140,000. Non-enrolling teachers exceed the staffing ratios, so counselors, 1.6 million. Early learning and childcare. So we have early childhood educators or ECEs in our kindergarten classes at a cost of 993,000. That does include the allocation from inclusive learning. We have a Strong Start early childhood educators, and these are the ones that are in excess of a special purpose grant that we get for our Strong Start centers. Inclusive learning, we receive funding from the ministry based on students with designations, and there's levels 1, 2, and 3. We spend 12.2 million in excess of that revenue that's received from the ministry. Pathways and partnerships, there's revenue that we receive from Skilled Trades BC for some of their programming. We spend 1.2 million in excess of that funding. Okay, and then on this list, these ones also don't have a collective agreement, may not have a collective agreement obligation, but they may be under a service contract, so it's something that we contract out, or there can be separation. Departments is listed, and I haven't put a number beside that. Departments are required for statutory compliance, so for example, the payroll department pay people, we have financial reporting obligations, health and safety, and things like that. A department couldn't be completely eliminated, but it could have reductions made to it. For example, in previous years, facilities is a good example because they've had over 700,000 ongoing reductions in the past 4 years. Probably the most significant one I remember is state-time custodians. And they've also made 1.8 million in one-time reductions for not filling positions over the past 4 years. And then the other one I'll mention to you is that there's been a significant reduction in supplies and services across all departments and schools for that matter. Inclusive learning, so specifically for speech, language pathologists, psychologists, occupational therapy and physical therapy, orientation and mobility, all of those combined, we're spending 3.3 million. Under mental health, so youth and family counselors, YFCs, they're contracted, and we spend 1.7 million. Student transportation, so this is busing. We have buses that we provide for inclusive learning students. We also provide busing for students who live in the Phoenixville area because they live outside of what we've set as a walk limit. And we provide crossing guard services as well, and there's a portion of the crossing guard services that is unfunded by municipalities. The total of all of those things is 1.4 million. And lastly, technology. So network infrastructure, that's your Wi-Fi access points and switches, student and staff devices, printers, tech packages. We're spending 1.9 million. So I'll just go through the budget balance and considerations. There's been one change if you saw this list from March 9th. Starting with reductions, one time. So we have under network infrastructure, a reduction of 155,476. This will have some projects delayed until 27-28. Staff devices, a reduction of 365,000. And some of the purchases of those devices will be delayed until 27-28. Information technology for learning department, reduction of 147,102. This is a temporary restructure of the department leadership. The director is currently on secondment. And we have acting district principal position that will hold vacant for the year. Reductions ongoing. Pathways and partnerships and aviation program, a reduction of 44,850. You would have seen this one on the list as a reduction one time. I think the last 2 years we've been unable to fill this position. And other career career prep programs such as task and follow tech are available to students. Pathways and partnerships, career centers, a reduction of 259,946. So each secondary school will receive one linear career center teaching block, and linear means for the whole year. Some schools currently have 2 to 3 blocks. And I know that career center coordinators, if position, those hours will remain the same at all schools. Also, pathways and partnerships, a reduction of 139,831. This is a restructuring within the department to a district vice principal and 1 teacher, from a district vice principal and 2 teachers. And continuing with ongoing reductions, pathways and partnerships, a reduction of 8,000. This is money that has been historically spent on supporting attendance at the CES conference, so that will no longer be able to be supported. Just to note that the budget for program supplies and services are not in here. Middle school music, a reduction of 250,871. Middle schools will continue to offer concert band 6, 7, and 8, and strings 6, 7, and 8. And elementary and secondary school music will continue as is. Itinerant support, a reduction of 69,916. This is a 0.2 FTE speech and language pathologist, a 0.1 psychologist, a 0.2 FTE deaf and hard of hearing teacher. These are current vacancies and temporary positions that will not be filled. There are no direct layoffs that will result. Continuing with ongoing reductions, inclusive learning student transportation, a reduction of 165,921. There's criteria that's set for eligibility to access inclusive learning busing. And if only eligible riders receive busing, will result in fewer runs. And just a note that the current cost per rider is 8,921. Early childhood educators, a reduction of 159,660. This is 3 FTE ECEs in kindergarten classes. And note that these positions will be prioritized for consideration of allocation contingency funds and inclusive learning available. And that the ECEs currently in Strong Start remain the same. Youth and family counselors, YFCs, a reduction of 44,558. Just a note there that all schools will receive a minimum 0.5 FTE teacher counselors. The YFC is a contractor. Every school will continue to have access to YFCs. 14 prioritized schools have dedicated YFCs, and contracted hours may be slightly reduced for some schools. Additions, one time, we have the EA mentor on the list. It was added in last year's budget process. We had anticipated that bargaining may have been done and included in that process, but it hasn't occurred yet. We're extending that for 1 more year. The net of 36,000 is already included in the budget. Student devices. 115,000 addition, one time. Increase in purchase of Chromebooks to maintain a student device ratio 4:1 at elementary and 3:1 at middle and secondary. And under the privacy management program, a new privacy legislation requires that you complete privacy impact assessments on any software that is collecting personal information These funds would be used for a contractor to perform privacy impact assessments on software that is used district-wide. This is the last page. Additions one time, a managed print strategy. 52,960. There's an increase in the cost of the print device replacement. It's not adding printers, it's just a cost escalation related to the refresh of the printers. There's a certain number that are replaced every year. And then reallocation on this is the change that you have seen since March 9th. There was a counseling reduction at 0.2 FTE counselors and continuing education. There's low program enrollment for that. There may be adults who are attending. And SJ Burnside's current counseling allocation is able to support these adult students. So the reallocation is counseling elementary and middle, same amount, 27,966. 0.2 FTE counselor reallocated to support an elementary school and a middle school, 0.1 FTE each. That's it.
Thank you, Katrina. As you can see, the budget is pretty complicated and there are a lot of reductions to get to that 1.5 million. What I thought we would do now is we've received a lot of letters and I've read every one of them. Some of them had stories of how students would be impacted, which is incredibly sad to hear. And others shared their own experience. While others still had misinformation and questions. And so what I thought we could do just for a few moments is I'd like to introduce our superintendent, Devwin. And I've taken the questions that have come in those letters and tried to come up with just a few that would hopefully help people understand a little bit more. And of course, the first one was around middle school music. So, you know, how will middle school music be delivered next year? What's it going to look like if there is a $250,000 cut? The school district will still be spending above and beyond $1 million for middle school music, but what will it look like? How will it be different? So Deb, could you answer that?
Sure, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that this is an important topic that we have and that we have some time this evening just to clarify. So as we move forward, as you've seen already, there's $1.2 million that is spent in middle school music. And next year will be approximately $1 million. What that looks like currently is students can take up to 8 music classes a week. And that, as you can imagine, is more than literacy and more than numeracy in our district. It is more than any other district in the province, and it's also more than our neighboring districts. Having said that, though, the commitment that we all understand is around music. Music in elementary, music in middle, and music in secondary. So with the $1 million, all middle schools will be able to offer band 6, 7, and 8, 3 days a week. Strings, 2 days a week. And they will still have some FTE to offer something that middle school feels is important. So that may be choir, that may be musical theater, and within the staffing, schools can make decisions. So they'll receive the staffing for middle music, and they will know what matters within their school, and they will make a decision on what they want to hold. So there are permutations to that. Maybe there's 2 blocks a week of a band class, maybe there's 3, maybe there's string 6, 7, and 1 of 8. So I think it's important to recognize that while they may not be able to take 8 or 9 classes a week, they can take 6. There would be 6 classes minimally available. So just want to really be clear on what will be moving forward to next year. And having conversations at your school about what matters, because we know that there's schools that have really strong choir programs. And they want to try and maintain those. There's schools that have musical theater. There's schools that have jazz bands. And we want to try to provide the funding available to allow for those to happen. That again is beyond what any other district provides. So we recognize that, we know it's important in our district. And so we want to keep that at about $1 million.
Deb, can you talk a little bit about choir? So well, we've got a lot of questions about choir and how choir can be part of the curriculum, how choir is part of the curriculum in neighboring school districts.
Yeah, there's a few ways that can happen. One is that it can be a club, and that's what currently happens in our neighboring districts and in elementary school. I know that's not optimal to many, and that's why there is the additional flexible funding that will be in middle schools. There's also options to move forward and offer it as an exploratory class. And that is what happens in Saanich and Soup, where students in grade 6, 7, and 8 choose a music, and that becomes the exploratory. It's in the ADST, it's a prep, and it's fun. So these are things that we can be talking through and looking at as opportunities and options that work for that middle school.
Thank you. One of the questions that we received in a lot of the letters, and I don't think I need to go into this part in too much detail because you can see it on the slides, is, and I think it's a pretty common response, is just cut administration. As you can see from the slides, we're the second lowest in the province around administration. The average is 4.1% of the operating budget is spent on district administration, and in our district, it's 2.6. So I just wanted to clarify that because that came in quite a lot. Another thing that came in as a question, and it actually stemmed from a press release. So there was a misinformation out there about 2 new director positions at the tune of 400,000 that was added. That isn't accurate. So I'm going to ask them to explain that piece.
So for this particular school year, 25-26, we reorganized our district team, and instead of having 2 district principals, we have 2 directors of instruction and learning. This aligns with our strategic plan, and it allows for them, actually, to be honest, to do a lot more work. It was an incremental cost of $2,500, not $400,000. And just to be clear, they have more work, more responsibilities, and fewer vacation days. So it aligns with where we were heading, and also based on the fact that we had a reduction in our associate superintendent number. We didn't have support for elementary schools, and so these directors support 27 elementary schools, in addition to all of the work that they do.
Thanks for that clarification. Another question was about pathways and partnerships. So how will pathways and partnerships continue to offer the kind of support that they do to secondary students and schools?
Yeah, this is one that we will very closely monitor. We want to find out how this is working in secondary schools. As Katrina mentioned, there still will be 1 linear block in each of the secondary schools. There still will be the career center coordinators. We have 2 staff members at the district office as well as district team members who can support. But we really want to make sure that the students are receiving the support they need in order to successfully transition into post-secondary trades, and at the same time in their secondary years be part of dual track and task programs.
Great, thank you. Last question, how will kindergarten classes be supported if they've had a reduction to their early childhood educator? Can you explain how that works?
I will. Over the past few years, we have initiated and expanded the number of ECE, so early childhood educators, and they work alongside teachers in kindergarten classes. ECEs provide an added layer of support in priority schools. And schools that may experience a reduction due to this budget consideration are schools that have more than one ECE. And so this approach allows us to retain ECE expertise within the early years. And we adjusted in that school, so that ECEs can continue to contribute to the planning and the programming and support for all classrooms, kindergarten in particular.
Thank you. Thanks, Deb. As I said at the beginning, we're going to move into roundtable discussions, 3 ways to give feedback, get your questions answered before you leave. If your facilitator can't answer a question that you have, they're just gonna raise their hand and one of us will come over and help out. So no final closure. The people at home, I'd like to say goodbye and enjoy the rest of the evening. I'm hoping that we can help